and welcome to the 43rd Asian American International Film Festival. My name is Winton, and we are here with our last live Q&A that I am so excited for because we brought this category in last year to great success, and we're so glad to be able to bring it back. I am joined today with two of our episodic directors, Hong and Jayesh. If we can just start with some introductions first. So Hong, if you want to just start, intro yourself and the show.
Cool. So my name is Hong. I'm the director, writer of Sideways Smile. Sideways Smile is a comedic web series about a young Asian American woman who goes on a journey of sexual discovery after reluctantly enrolling in a course to learn how to have an orgasm. There's my logline.
Jayesh.
Hi, my name is Jaidka. I'm originally from India, and I'm the co-creator, producer, director, and editor of Highbread. Highbread is a long-form comedic series about an Indian international student who's come to Boston to study medicine. His pothead roommate, Dennis, who either smokes pot or is going to consume it in any way possible, and a rundown bakery owner, Zoe, who struggles to make ends meet. The fun part of the bakery of the story is when all three of these people come together to start the first of its kind pot bakery in Boston. And I think I forgot to mention that the lead character's name, the international student's name, is Jay. And yeah, that's the story.
Cool. I mean, I think what's so awesome about both of these shows is that they are fun concepts, right? Nothing dour, nothing angsty, which I really appreciate within the Asian American scene. Hong, could you just tell us a little bit what kind of inspired you to write the show?
Sure. So the show is based. The show is based on a real class that I actually took when I was 22, and so that's the inspiration for it. I think partly also in 2017, I wrote the first pilot in 2017, which Winton you know about. But at the time, Broad City, Insecure, Chewing Gum were just like blowing up, right? They were great shows, and I was watching them and I was like, wow, these are so funny. I really want to see like an Asian American lead being hilarious and like ridiculous. And so that's sort of where the idea came from. And the class itself was a really big pivotal moment in my life. And so I really wanted to share the journey that I went on and kind of like create a story from that. And that's the inspiration for the show.
Yeah, Josh, what was the inspiration for Highbread?
A lot of what Highbread comes into is from my personal experience as an international, right? So I came to Boston in 2018 for my master's in film. And in the first month or so, I soon realized that, there's obviously a big difference in terms of culture, no negatives on either side. But I soon also realized that there were certain stereotypes that came with the Indians for that matter, like they're called as the model minority. You always expect them to be either doctors or engineers or be cab drivers or 7-Eleven owners. But then after further research, and because Boston is such a cultural hub of people from different places with different backgrounds, I started realizing that every single person from a different background has a stereotype, right? And Hybrid is literally about breaking all those stereotypes. So, like, just to give you a bit of an example, how an Indian medical student, pre-med student, wants to become baker, how this one pothead character you think is completely 2D and is only there for the laughter, and like the most generic character ever has the deepest graph. And like, even for that matter, like coming from my personal experience, like I have grown up looking up to my mother. Right. And she and I are in such a stage where like she talks to me about her work and she tells me how like even today in the 21st century there is a struggle for women at the leading position in life, right? And the third character Zoe is based so much on her, wherein this is completely to break that stereotype, wherein like she's the leader of the three in terms of the bakery. She's the owner of the bakery. She's mentally the most headstrong character, and apart from these three characters, even marijuana comes with its own pre-existing narrative.
Mm-hmm.
For decades we think that marijuana is criminal, is illegal, but like in so many states in the United States itself, it isn't illegal anymore. And there's a certain type of marijuana that's called medical marijuana. So it's about time that we shatter that stereotype as well. So that's where Highbread comes from.
Yeah, I mean, both of the shows here that we're showcasing kind of do talk about quote unquote taboo topics, right? Sex, self pleasure, and then pot and marijuana. What was it like to kind of like navigate these issues? Did anything kind of come up where you either got like pushback from a producer or pushback from anybody that got involved in the project?
I can go. I would say that no, I don't think I got pushback from anybody. I think the whole point of our show was to talk about these topics. I did very purposely wanted to make it very nuanced, right? So like, for instance, the second episode, which is one of my favorite episodes, is about like the white man, Asian woman stereotype, right? And that it happens, right?
Yeah.
But the idea that there is like this yellow fever and like these white men, obviously those people exist, right? And they do Asian women because they're submissive. There's that narrative. But in my circle, like in New York City, like there are people, I know plenty of strong Asian women who are with white men, and that's not the case, right? So I think there's like a much more nuanced discussion of that. There's also like the nuance of how it applies to the gay community. And so we sort of try to like tackle that without preaching anything, right? To just be like, these things exist and you should really be aware of them. But yeah.
Yeah.
In my case, also great answer by the way. I think in my case there were two different things, and not necessarily a pushback, because firstly, I made my move to the United States in a way wherein I wanted to make a pilot, which I had planned like somewhere in 2017. So I made sure that I did that under university's wing, because I knew a new place. It would be much better for me to work my way in through university's help. That being said, it was a big problem because my project was around 35 pages, and the next biggest project was 14 pages. So for the university to give me a green light on this project, it took them a really long time for them to be like, okay, you are eventually a student and we want you to finish it. So how are you going to do that? And I was like, no, I'm fairly confident I can do it, etc., etc. It was a really it was a tough period, like just trying to manage everything. And apart from that, I feel like the second thing that was probably the biggest stress in my head when I was making this was that I was carrying the image of Indians all over the world on my shoulders. Because for the longest time, whenever I see a show internationally made about Indians, I have an issue with it. Because I'm like, that's not how the real culture is. And this is pissing me off at this point, right? But now I'm making it. And I'm making it with people that I am not very known to. So I have to always be completely cautious. And I was just grateful that my writer and my co-creator, Daniel Landa, so he's from the United States, but he was sensitive enough to always come back to me, and like we always had a very healthy discussion when we were making our Indian characters, the characters of the parents, and how they came out and how we showed them. So I feel like those were the only pushbacks.
Yeah, I mean, I think the other thing too, talking about these quote unquote taboo topics is how you guys visually showed it. I mean, Hong, particularly in the first episode, I think there are some very creative kind of shots to kind of get around the more sensitive topics. Could you talk a little bit about how you were thinking about visually representing a lot of these things that like we are technically not allowed to show in a lot of venues?
Am I allowed to say?
You can use any word that you want. We are safe within Twitch guidelines to discuss things. Just don't show like suddenly like a vagina on screen.
So I mean, I never wanted to show nudity, right, in the show. It was never a thing that we wanted to do. We just thought it was really funny. Like the actor Kathy, she was wearing like clear color underwear. And for those who haven't watched, I mean, I guess they've watched it by this point.
I hope so.
They're in the Q&A.
How dare you if you don't.
So wait, the question is how we navigated.
Yeah, how did you visually? What was the process of visually representing all of these things?
I mean, it was about the comedy, and I think we just thought it was gonna, like, I was inspired by like Broad City, like Broad City shows them with their vaginas out all the time, and they always just like pixelate it, right? And there's like something about pixelating it just like out of nowhere that is just like, that's funny. So I think that, and then also, I mean, for the more less explicit stuff, I do have a lot of montages in the series, right? And for me, that was a great way to tell a lot in a short period of time. And we really only had like 10 minutes or less per episode. And so it was really about like, and I also love just like the fun and the fast pace of these things. And so that was like a key part of the way that we created it.
Yeah, I think, Jayesh, you also have some creative ways of depicting some of the things that were happening in the pilot. What was that process with, the GP as well as with your co-creator?
Firstly, Hong, I think I have to watch the show now. I really want to see how you went about it because it seems really interesting. Apart from that, just taking over from what Hong said, a lot of what I thought of was like, montages really help in these situations, and montages in the kind of comedy that I'm trying to create, I can literally just put like a sheep crying right there and it'll still be funny because, like you can just sit there. If you edit it right, it just plays. But apart from that, I feel like the conversations that I had with my creative team were never about hiding something because partly when it comes to marijuana is actually legal in Boston, right? It's legal in Massachusetts. It's legal in Boston. There are loopholes where it's not legal and where it's legal, and how do you go about it? And that's the fun part as to where we are playing with our show. So for me, if I would have tried to hide anything, it would defeat the purpose of my show. So for me, I was, and we had this conversation when we were like, obviously, when it comes to weed, you can't show that on camera. So we used oregano, and like basic stuff like that. But apart from that, like we always were very conscious about that, and I'm very thankful to my university where they gave me the opportunity of not having to hide anything. We never reached that stage anyway, but yeah, I am a thorough believer of show the truth if you have to. So
yeah, I mean, I think. But yeah, both of your shows are not afraid. It's not afraid at all. The other thing that I think kind of ties your two shows together is kind of this great ensemble cast that you guys have. Hong, if you can talk a little bit about casting for an ensemble cast, but also juggling and making sure that each character really has time. I think even within the pilot, but especially for festival goers, you see the first two episodes. Within the first two episodes, we know a lot about the kind of the main leads very, very quickly.
Yeah. Okay. So so I think it's interesting because I always wanted Dara, who is like the comedic character, right, to have like a really strong character, and I always wish I had more time to give her full arc, which is, when you watch the whole season, the last episode does have a full arc for her. But I think even more than that, we have like 8 people in a classroom that we had to show within the first, we had to establish that. And for me, when I was composing those characters, I gave them very specific stories. Like they all have like very, very specific backstories that if you really watch the show and you listen to them talk about their life, you'll get like little snippets of their life that really craft a picture of why they're in that class. And so to me, that was super important that they weren't just caricatures or they weren't just there to like spit out some like, some learnings in class. It was all very based on their actual experience. And so, yeah, so I think I tried to do that. And then when I write, I always think about like, what is the thing that I need to say about this particular character in this particular scene? Like you have to get it out, and we have 10 minutes. And I think that's the fun part. I guess the interesting part about such a short amount of time is that you really have to like think about what is it you want to say in that specific time frame. I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, no, definitely. And Jayesh, I think in the pilot, it's mostly kind of Jay and Zoe that we get the most amount of time with. But yeah, how was it juggling kind of this really interesting cast of characters?
to be fairly honest, casting was something I was very particular about. Like how Hans said, like her character was more like what she wanted. If I'm not wrong, you said that it was a comedic character and it came across very comedically. With my character, with Jay, it was a lot about things that happen to him are funny. So he has to be someone who has to react to things, like he plays the pony which gets banged up. But it's really it was so my lead character Jay, he's actually not Indian, he's from Mexico. The easiest for me to cast and were Zoe and Dennis,
Hmm.
the roommate and the bakery owner, because they were from the U. They were and phenomenal actors. I love them. And casting Jay was the second toughest job. I would say I finally found him 10 days before we had to start shooting.
Oh my
And,
gosh.
yeah, that was stressful. And backstage was a genuine lifesaver there. But the best of them all was finding the parents, which I think was the best part. Like finding authentic Indian parents in Boston was tough enough. So I had to literally. So my father's character, he's actually a bassist in a death metal band. And
Whoa.
yeah, he's a bassist in a death metal band, and the mother is she lives in the outskirts of Massachusetts. So it was like a genuine struggle. It was a genuine struggle just trying to find them, and eventually it just I was just glad that their chemistry just sat down. Like it's really tough to like. And just funnily enough, not all of them together ever saw each other because of the schedule, but it's as you move on with the show, you start seeing different drafts. It's only that you saw a lot of Jay because the story is from his lens, but there's a lot more to Dennis and the father and the mother and Zoe, of course, as we move on.
Yeah, I mean, I think the the parents are
Yeah.
amazing, and I'm so surprised that they were kind of yeah, I guess like more last minute or harder to find. They seemed perfect to me. Han, the the thing that I always love about Sideways Smiles is that it is not afraid to say the awkward thing out loud. Um, and I wonder, as both of these are kind of indie productions. Were there any moments where you were second guessing saying some of these like, things out loud when you needed to get it done?
What is there a specific part that you're thinking about?
I mean, I'm thinking just like, I think in general, the idea of going to a financier and going, I need
Oh.
you to give me money because I want to tell a story about women having sex, talking about the awkward like racial dynamics of dating. And like it's also really gay, right? Like, like the sheer thought of going to a financier with that log line, right, with that bundle of things, I'm like,
Yeah.
I don't know what I would do.
I feel like I should just use that. Actually, that's great. I feel like they're very into that these days. So I think what I was, I don't think I'm a very silly and probably awkward person, so I'll say whatever. But I think for the show, what I had anxiety about was making sure that I portrayed some of the more serious issues in the right way. So when we're talking about like anti-blackness in the Asian community, I really wanted that to be like I well researched and like kind of taken the nuances of that. Like I was reading, there's a book by Ellen Wu. She's like, I don't know if you know her, but she wrote a book basically about like the history of the model minority myth. And so I read that book while I was writing that episode 3, and which is not part of the thing,
Yeah.
but the
Look out for
festival.
it.
It was a great episode. But when I was writing that, I was like, okay, I have to and her book is like 1,000 pages long, right? And I was like, how do I do that and put it in like a 10-minute episode? So I think that was more of like the I wouldn't say awkward, but like the stuff that I really wanted to get right. Same with like the white man, Asian woman stuff. That was like some of the things that, I had more difficulty kind of crafting.
Yeah, I guess just is anything that yeah you were maybe anxious about or considering softening to make it a little bit more easier
When
to swallow
I
for other
would
people.
not lie to you, when was I not anxious? Right from the time when I went to the university itself, it was more about like because you're obviously surrounded by students, right? And not looking down upon anyone, but eventually they're all students. And I was as well. I was a master's graduate. I was doing my master's at the time. But like, when you go up to someone and you tell them, hey, I'm doing a 35-minute page uh, pilot that has 42 locations, and I'm looking for a crew. What they look into is, oh my god, this guy's going to work a lot and I can't be a part of this. So I got a lot of pushback in the sense. I got a lot of pushback in the sense where like it was tough for me to find people. It was tough for me to find people that believed in my vision. But once I did, they were impeccable. They were amazing. We went on about, it was to a stretch wherein we had 7 days, 14-hour work days for each of them, and none of them complained because we all believed in the whole thing.
Mhm.
Then there was another stretch of 3 more days. Then there was 5 more days that I did alone actually. So there was a time when, like, by the time those 10 days finished, I still realized that there was a situation wherein I still needed some stuff from different people. The school had closed for winter break or something, and I was like, I have to finish it so that my graduation finishes. That was the time when I started doubting stuff, but I was just like, if we have to do it, we have to do it. So I just shot for 5 days alone myself. And yeah, I mean, by the time I was on the editing table, I was just like, I have the raw material. Now I just need to cook and I can do it. So that was the time when I was confident. But before that, the whole time, it was stressful.
Yeah, and Hong, so the festival showcased the I guess original pilot last year, and then yeah, you guys reshot the pilot and then shot out the rest of the season. Could you talk a little bit more about what that process was like, and then for there might be a couple people in the audience that saw both the original pilot and this new first episode. Was there any changes that you made because you could reshoot?
Yeah. Okay. So when we did the first pilot, it was self-funded, and it was a thing that it was my first film project ever, and so I just kind of did it because it was the thing that I wanted to do. We didn't have that much money, right? So I think production-wise is okay. And with that pilot, we actually got the Made in NY Women in Film grant. So they gave us money to finish the rest of the season. And when that happened, I was like, oh my God, I didn't expect to get this. I didn't expect to like have to do this in like the next 6 months. So it was like chaos. And so then once we got that money, we also fundraised. It was like a lot of other stuff going into that. And then we were able to shoot the whole season. So I did structurally, the pilot is the same. But the second scene, they switched from like an ice cream shop to a restaurant, and I made that change. And obviously the lines are also rewritten, and we had like a few changes to like the montage, but structurally it's basically the same. But in that second scene, I rewrote it and I changed the location because I thought that it was much easier to get the comedy across in a talking scene like that, because in the first, when they're walking, the blocking was so difficult, and we didn't have that much time. We really had to like nail this thing like right away. And so I was like, why don't we do this sitting down so that it's like quick? And actually, just to tell you, we actually shot 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 before we reshot the pilot. So the pilot was actually picked up. We did pick up like a pickup weekend, 3 months after we actually shot everything else. So it was a decision that I made because I was like, look, the quality of like the rest of the season is this, and I really want to match everything, So yeah.
I will miss some of that ice cream here that was in the original pilot.
There's still ice cream in the
there is still ice cream, but yeah, just like seeing just trying to control melting ice cream it was I think a part of the subtextual comedy of that first pilot. Jayesh, how was production for you? You know, it sounds like you had like multiple periods. I guess like anything surprising or completely threw you off guard?
No, actually, I think I knew what I was getting into. I mean, it was there was a funny part of it though, wherein like half of the crew thought that the story of Jay, the lead character, was based on me because the name was similar.
Jay.
But the point was that was actually kept by my chair because like he was looking through all the stories, and he one day is asking me, why aren't you named your lead character yet? And I'm like, I'm trying to find the right kind of name, you know, like with some kind of meaning and etc. And he's like, yeah, that's bullshit. His name is Jay. Because they call me Jay, and he's like, his name is Jay. And ever since then, everyone thinks I'm some pothead who wanted to be a baker, wherein none of that is my story. And it's hilarious because how the crew was like, so that's your story, right? That's your story.
Yeah, it's my story. I'm here to tell it with you guys. I think what's another thing for people who may not have, you know, shot or know how to shoot episodic is that a pilot is really hard, and you're trying to do a lot in a little time because you're trying to set up for something in the future, right? To the point where, you know, Hong, you get a grant to get the rest of the season. Were there any scenes or bits of the original pilot script that didn't make it actually into the pilot, the shot pilot?
I mean, that pilot was rewritten like 10 times, so I honestly don't even remember. Well, I can tell you, so when we shot it the second time, I had this little bit right after the first scene where she's like faking this orgasm, that they had like a little moment, like a little pillow talk, her and the guy, and we shot it, and we had a bunch of takes of it, different lines, and I should just cut it. We cut it in like the final cutting room because I was like, this doesn't work, even though there's like so many funny lines that I want to put in, it just doesn't add anything to the story. It just like is awkward. So I axed that one. But that was it. I honestly don't remember because like I've rewritten it so many times. Yeah.
Yeah, anything just that maybe got cut in the editing process?
Well, so I mean, the first draft was 60 pages, so 64 pages. So I'm getting a lot of it got cut out. But exactly, we had like 11 drafts or something as well. But like, I do remember one scene that we actually shot and didn't make it. It was when Jay is actually with spoiler, with the ADSA officer here, and he's about to be expelled. But and then he says something that I'm not going to say, but like that was probably the funniest scene of the film for me. But like Hans said, you know, when it's not doing anything for the story, it's not doing anything for the story. So we found a way around it, and we were like, all right, we can piece it well without it. Might as well go with it. So.
Yeah, sometimes you have to kill your darlings.
Yeah.
I think the other thing that's hard about episodic that people might not understand is kind of pacing out the story, pacing out character arcs, you know, throughout episodes, and to an extent, you kind of have to pick the end of the season, right? I guess how has the writing process been, or for Hong, how was the writing process in terms of making sure that you had that coherent narrative across all of your episodes?
Yeah, I always knew that she would end up in a place where she's sort of discovering that she, you know, might be queer, and she's like has a crush on a woman in her class. So I always knew that was where it ended up. The hard thing about the show was that, you know, once I was like, you know what, we're gonna do an homage to Get Out in the second episode, like it became a genre piece. And so once it became genre, then it was like, how do we keep and if you watch the rest of the show, every episode is sort of like a different genre. And so I was like, how do I keep sort of the insanity of it, like that, you know, the viewer never really know what they're expecting when they tune into the next episode, but also keep the, you know, cohesiveness of the story and the characters and the thing. And so I think partly partly, it was always the structure of this show was always that she was going to learn something in class and then like see how it applies to her life, right? But then I played around with the actual like structure of the episode, where sometimes it was a flashback, sometimes it was, I don't know, like a flash forward, sometimes it was like a horror episode, right? And so I think that was a big part of like thinking about the show. And then also visually, I worked a lot with like our DP to make, and the colorist also, to make sure that we had like a visually cohesive kind of show, and sort of creating that narrative together. Yeah.
Gotcha. And for me, the biggest challenge was, again, since I was coming from India and I was making a show that was predominantly in the United States, it was really important for me to tell this story through the words of a person that's always lived here, but at the same time is sensitive enough to understand that it's an international story. So for me, the biggest challenge was finding the right writer. Like I met around 50 odd writers, and like some were good writers but weren't in the same genre. Some weren't confident enough. Some I just couldn't connect with. Eventually, I did find the writer Daniel Blander, and he and I connected really well. And like I stated before, he's always been very sensitive about cultures. And like the best part about him and I is that the fact that we both hold story credit came across in the way wherein like we both really spoke about the story, in the sense wherein I never breached his space, and once I had the script as a director, and he never came back to me with it and saying, or like he never got pissed because there were certain changes that were made because they had to be made. So in that sense, like that's how we went about the writing process. I feel like the writing process was the most fun part about making the film. And like just trying to create different stuff, like, randomly just writing the weirdest thing and just being like, yeah, that's not going to work, but it was really funny. So yeah.
Yeah. I think the other thing about comedic shows too is that sometimes there's improv involved. How much was with the actors and really vibing, and how much was just these are the jokes written on the script?
Yeah. I did make them do a bit of improv. I don't know if they enjoyed it. So I think for me, especially the pacing of Sideways Smile, it had to be really, really fast, right? And so when honestly, the only note I had for like most of the actors, especially Diane and Kathy, was do it faster. Just like do the scene faster. And we would do these exercises where, if you've done improv, there's like a exercise called half life, and you just half the scene. You're like, do it in a minute, do it in 30 seconds, do it in 15 seconds, So I kind of made them do that basically before we would go for a shot. And so the second episode, the second scene in the pilot, Diane kind of like improv sort of that bit about the bop it, twist it, like that kind of thing. So yeah, there's moments of that, and I think for me, I love improv. I think it's really organic, and I think if you can get them to like, we did that exercise for them to know what is it that you need to communicate in this particular scene, and then you can do it however you want, right? So yeah, there was some improv. I think it was mostly scripted, but that definitely some improv.
Yeah.
In my case, I like working with a structure. That being said, like I come from a background of theater, and I did start with acting. So first thing I do whenever I meet my actors in the rehearsal space to just open them up is to actually do improvs with them, be with them in the scene, enjoy that. Completely different. I don't want anything to do with the film. Just get them all comfortable, and then I do tell them to remember the lines, and my improv comes in the sense wherein I give them the free space in the rehearsal space to do their movements. I'm not a person who likes blocking, giving them blocks as much as they do their thing, and then if I'm not liking something, I will do the directing bit, as it goes, and like try to mold their minds in a way where, as opposed to telling them do this, like that makes it mechanical. So like by the time they actually reached the set, it came to a situation wherein everything they did felt like it was sort of natural. I hope it did. and it didn't feel like I had to make them say do it like this or say it louder or whatever. So in that sense, I feel like improvs in the beginning help, but on set, I'm kind of iffy about it because I'm a person for my crew, and I know if the actor moves slightly this much, which could be great for the film, 30 people on set, it could be a problem for. So yeah,
Right. It can be a complicated dance.
absolutely.
Yeah. Is there anything that you would change about your respective pilots now that you've had some time away from it?
Just the pilot?
Yeah, we'll say first episode.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I think there was always this thought, and right now I'm working on a half-hour pilot. So there is always this thought of like, does she get her orgasm at the end of the first episode? And when I wrote the pilot, it was one, I also wanted to sort of enter it as a short and kind of a standalone thing. So that's why I sort of gave her that finishing arc, literally. And so I think that's something that I would, especially when we do a half-hour pilot, it's something that I might hold back and kind of maybe finish the season with it or something. It's like a thing that, because that's like the whole premise of the show, basically, right?
Mm-hmm.
In my case, I feel like it's been what 7 months or something since I finished it. I feel like every filmmaker somewhere down the line has this thing. I mean, like Hong, I believe you'd agree as well, wherein like like after you've seen the film and like after 2-3 months you start hating it. Like that's what's happening with me at this point. Like I watch it and I'm like, I just want to redo it. I want to do it again. I don't like what I've done. Like I can't see it. If someone says, "Show me your pilot," and if they're watching it in front of me, I get up and leave. And it's just that. But technically, giving you an answer, I feel like obviously still because I was shooting it with a university, a lot of things didn't go as planned. But if given the chance, I would like to pace it out more. For me, this was always a 60-minute pilot. It never became that because I didn't have the resources at the time, and that's how I'm actually pitching it. Because the show is not just about the comedy; it does delve into a lot of serious stuff, and like I don't like closing myself down into just one genre. So yeah, pace it out more moments there, more organic comedy, a film that is not driven by editing but driven by characters, basically. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's something really interesting about the episodic form, right? If you're prepping for traditional TV, right? Normally a half-hour comedy pilot ends up being maybe like 31 minutes, right? And then your full hours are ends up being like I've seen like 55, I've seen like hour 15, but you're kind of like hovering on that hour mark. And yeah, I think it's been a while since I've seen a long form like TV comedy. So that's really really exciting to me. As we start wrapping up, what is like the future? So Hong, you have a full season 1 done, and the show is currently on the festival circuit, so people have maybe only seen like maybe up to episode 3 or 4 maybe. When and how can people watch more of the show?
Well, so I mean, the future is that we want to pitch it as a half-hour comedy and try to get it picked up by a network. So that's the dream. And actually, some of the festivals are showing everything. So, for instance, New Fest, Bushwick are showing the whole season,
Yes.
and then the rest of the festivals we have are showing 3 episodes. So go to those if you want to see the rest.
Yeah, support New Fest. They're one of our sister festivals here in New York.
Yeah. So I don't think I can actually say like when is it gonna like be fully publicly released yet, but we do want to at some point. I'd love to get on like a really big YouTube channel. Anybody out there?
Ooh.
Give us those views. But yeah, basically that's where it's gonna be.
First of all, congratulations, Hong. That's amazing.
Thank you.
And my best of luck and a lot of love to you. I hope this gets picked up. It has a great story to it. In terms of where Highbread is at the moment, thankfully enough, we made it to the Independent Film Projects Episodic Lab, and through that lab, got really nurtured, me and my co-creator, and we made a few contacts. Eventually, landed ourselves at the IFP week. We made a few pitches to a few companies. I mean, there's no point of naming it till you make it, right? We're looking to hear back from them. Like I said, it's a situation wherein we can get an answer back from a lot of them, and it could be none as well. I'm not a person who likes holding himself back to one project, so I'm already jumped on the next one. And I am a co-creator for another project that we already shot the proof of concept for the pilot, and it's an anthology thriller, and I'm writing my first feature. So trying to take all my babies together, making sure. I hope you've seen that meme, wherein like the Ninja Turtles are all small and there's like the old guy who's walking with the Ninja Turtles, and eventually the Ninja Turtles become old and the old guy's walking with them. That's kind of going to be my story. Hopefully, I mean, if there's any producer, exec, or anyone watching, do give me and Hong a try. We guys are good. We try to do the best stuff. Yes.
Yes. Yeah. So I guess, are you hoping for Highbread for TV or for web? Because I do think that web series is actually a really, really lovely space.
I'm actually targeting streaming services. Yeah. I do want to target streaming services. I feel like in terms of TV, there's going to be another issue that might just come in. A lot of, like you said, like we guys spoke about earlier, a lot of stuff might have some kind of censorship involved. Because like there's also a lot of LGBTQ stuff that comes later in the season. So we want to make sure we can get everything across.
Yeah, I mean, I think the TV space is weird right now, and like arguably the streaming space too, but. It is still shocking how few comedic series that are helmed by people of color are available. So really best of luck to both of y'all to hopefully hit a wider audience. But I know that at least us within the community are so thrilled and we're so excited to see whatever you guys are going to be doing next. Hong, are you working on anything outside of a Sideways Smiles half hour that we can maybe look out for as those long negotiations happen?
Sure. I can. Well, I've always wanted. So the other feature that I really want to write is called, I have a name for it, My Mom, the Russian Raver. And it's my mother studied in Russia in the 1980s at the height of the Soviet Union. And so I really wanted to do this story about sort of her time there. And the premise of it would be that it's like a mother and daughter, sort of the daughter's helping her mom track down her Venezuelan best friend that she went to school with in Russia. And I think what's holding me back right now is my mom isn't willing to talk about any of that. and also just like the research that should go into like, researching that period of time. Because I think historically that would be such a fun, also production design, like 1980s, like Soviet Russia with like all these it's like very international. It was very international there back then. So yeah.
Yeah, Jayesh, can you give us a peek into what you're brewing in your feature?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is a lot to do with. So a lot of my ideas are about psychology and like human mind. So this one's about a girl wherein she works at a passport office and she's doing the same thing all over again. Like it's like a monotony. Her life is a monotony. And the film is a lot of my films are very inspired by Martin McDonough. So a lot of that dry humor, really dark dry humor is there, wherein she's even trying to commit suicide, but like it's so funny to the audience that they don't see where the dark comedy is coming from. But one day she gets kidnapped by this lunatic, and that's where I'm gonna leave it.
Oh, tension. All right.
Yes.
Yes. Okay, one last question before we head out. We are in, I would not say the golden age of television. I think we are in a weird like soup pot of television where it's actually really hard to find good things. What is your TV/episodic recommendation that people can go and perhaps binge now that the festival is over?
Does it is it should be part of the festival or just anything?
No, anything.
Okay. I just watched Flowers. It's on Netflix. It's Olivia Colman. Will Sharp wrote it. Amazing. Watch the whole 6 episodes. And then I would also say This Country. Also a British show. I'm a huge fan of British shows. This Country, I think it's gonna be harder for you to find it online, but if you can, it's amazing. Hilarious.
I would again a huge fan of British shows. Sex Education,
Oh,
Six
show.
Section, Succession on HBO, Sex Education on Netflix. Um, I mean, I feel like everyone at this point is seeing it, but I have to say it. The Boys, Amazon Prime. These three shows. Watch it, then watch it again just to see how deep they've delved. And it's not just mainstream entertainment, wherein there's a lot that's going on there. And just as a filmmaker or as someone a part of the audience, when you find that out, that's really enriching. So yeah.
Cool. Well, thank y'all so much, and thank you guys for submitting to the festival. It's been a really fun time to go through episodic. My first couple of jobs in entertainment was in television, so to be able to dive back into it has been such a fun adventure. People, please do keep a lookout for Sideways Smiles available at Newfest, and then hopefully other places, and then hopefully Highbread will get picked up somewhere.
Yes, hopefully. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much, and thank you guys for joining me. And have a good rest of the night. We have a Warriors roundtable coming up right after this. It's a really interesting conversation. It's worth sticking around for. So thank you so much. Have a good rest of your night.
You too. Bye bye.